Are you selling a property and looking to do a 1031 exchange here in Tucson, Arizona? Well, this video's for you. Hello, my name's Tyler Ford, Tucson, Arizona with eXp Realty, and welcome to this episode of Living in Tucson, your Tucson real estate connection. And from time to time, I've got people that are reaching out to me wanting to do a 1031 exchange where they're relinquishing a property and wanting to buy something here in Tucson. And they're always asked for advice in terms of what is the best 1031 exchange company to use. Well, I've got a special guest that I'm going to be interviewing that's right here in Arizona. That is an expert. He's been at it for a long time. So we're going to dive on into that interview and learn all about 1031 exchanges and who you can use here if you're doing a 1031 exchange in Tucson or Arizona or even across the country. Well, hello everyone. This is Tyler Ford, eXp Realty here in Tucson, Arizona, and I've got a special guest with me today. And a couple weeks ago, I went to a 1031 exchange class, and Rick Wittstock was teaching the class. I learned a lot, although I've, done a 1031 a couple times myself. I've sold properties to people doing a 1031 and also represented quite a few clients on 1031 exchanges. I get questions all the time. It can sometimes be rather confusing. And so I want to bring the expert on, Rick, who's a QI, and I get it tongue twisted, Rick. So what does QI stand for?
Qualified intermediary.
So I always get the intermediary all tongue twisted up. So
it's a tough one.
We're gonna say QI for short. But Rick is a QI with an awesome 1031 exchange company and an expert in the field. Been at it a long time, and just going to do a quick interview to point people in the right direction. So first off, Rick, explain a 1031 and why somebody would want to do it.
Well, in a nutshell, a 1031 is in the subsection in the tax code. It simply is if you're an investor and you have a good gain or a sizable gain on your property, you'll be paying anywhere upwards of 20 to 30% on capital gains tax. So if you want to avoid paying capital gains tax and defer it, the 1031 vehicle will get you there so that you don't have to pay the capital gains tax as long as you're going to stay in the game and buy more investment properties.
Right. And do you recommend people reach out to their accountant, CPA, just to understand what their potential tax consequence could be, just to be able to make an educated decision as to what the right thing to do is?
Absolutely. So even in the early stages, you're just having the thought of putting your property on the market. It's an investment property. Get with your tax advisor first to find out what the tax consequences may be. And then secondly, if you have means, you can contact somebody like myself to give you those options on how a 1031 exchange works.
Yeah, and that's great advice, because as an agent, sometimes I've seen buyers of 1031s get into a crunch and then they make a poor decision. So if you understand all this up front, you're able to make a much better decision when it comes crunch time and negotiating repairs, benzers, timelines, and all that kind of good stuff. So
absolutely.
The next question, what are the requirements when doing a 1031 exchange? And I get this question all the time. Somebody wants to sell their primary residence or a second home. So talk about the requirements.
Yeah, and that gets a little confusing because every piece of real estate is subject to capital gains tax. So like you just mentioned, primary residence has its own tax exclusion. What qualifies you for a 1031 is as long as that rental property or investment property has productive or it's an investment property. So if it's real property, single family, commercial, income coming from that property for at least 1 year qualifies it for 1031 exchange. The exception is raw land. Raw land automatically becomes an investment that you're buying and holding, and it qualifies for like kind exchanging into real estate, residential or commercial, and vice versa.
That's good information, because a lot of people have land that they've held on to and they don't realize they can do a 1031 into an investment property and generate cash flow as a result of doing it, right?
Right, absolutely. So that's where you look into these things early.
Right. Okay. And so the next thing is the process, the milestones, and this is where people get tripped up. So talk about the milestones that exist when doing a 1031 exchange.
Right. Well, everything starts at the close of escrow, and we call that close of escrow, the selling property, the relinquished property,
Hmm.
technical terms, but it's the investment property. Once it's in close of escrow, that's when your timeline starts. So as a seller, you have control or you can negotiate the close of escrow to maybe start that timeline a little later to give yourself a little bit of head start looking for that replacement property. But once it officially starts, that day of close of escrow is your day zero, and you got 45 days from there to identify your replacement property, up to three or two times the gross sales price. Then you got plenty of time to close. You have a total of from close of escrow up to 180 days. The thing is, though, that sounds like 6 months. It is sometimes, but it isn't some other times because it's not business days, it's calendar days.
Hmm.
So, depending on when you start your exchange or when that close of escrow is.
And the three identified properties after the 45 days, you can no
Mhm.
longer replace one with another, but within that 45 days, you can exchange them at any time, correct?
Right. Yeah. We actually recommend just kind of keep that list with like yourself,
Hmm.
tailor with your client so that you can weed out the ones you want, not. And then when you get around the, say, the 43rd, 44th day of that 45 period, then reduce it down to three that you're more likely to be interested in. But like you said, once you go beyond that 45-day midnight, you can't change what you identified.
Right. And so those milestones, I mean, there's little or no flexibility in them. They are what they are, correct?
They are, unless there's like a natural disaster that happens where the property is located. So a lot of Californians right now have an extension.
Hmm. Okay, so now let's talk. And one thing I learned at your in your class, and I didn't realize this. So 1031 exchange companies and QIs, this is really, really important because when you sell your relinquished property, that money is then transferred to the 1031 exchange company, not
Right,
to the title company, not to yourself. Somebody else is
right,
holding your money. So talk about why, and again, this industry is not regulated, the QI.
right.
So talk about why it's so important to select the right company and the right QI, like yourself.
Right. Yeah, no, that's probably the biggest thing. People assume that it's a regulated industry because of the funds that we hold,
Hmm.
and we're not, unfortunately. So it's very important to ask anybody you're going to work with to be your QI is to find out what their security of funds are. Do they have a significant fidelity bond? Hopefully, they have the E&O insurance. And what and where are they depositing your funds? What bank? Is it a larger bank? Is it a smaller bank? Because they have protections too on where these funds are being sent or being held. So where IPX 1031 Exchange is our company, our parent company is Fidelity National Finance, Fortune 300 company. You can look us up online. We get third party audited, and we're very stable as far as holding those funds, and we're over insured on just even a small one. We're insured up to about $100 million per exchange.
Right. And that's why, again, I like Rick and his company and Fidelity. I use Fidelity for my escrows and have a long-term relationship. So you guys are under the same umbrella, which is a big umbrella, and they don't want to jeopardize their their names. So I mean, they're not going to be doing have you underneath their umbrella making a mess, correct?
No, absolutely. We're under their guidance, and of course the shareholders for FNF.
Right.
And they're basically we're just a complement to the Fidelity brands.
Hmm.
So it's just that where we can help out with the title side of business with the exchanges.
Right. And it doesn't matter. I mean, it helps if your escrow is with Fidelity, but regardless of the title company, you're in Arizona and can you do 1031s everywhere or just
Yeah,
in
we're a national company, so from my office, I can do an exchange from Florida to New
Mhm.
York to California, anywhere in the United States, we're able to handle that exchange, and that's a big plus because there's not a lot of QIs out there that are national like us.
Got it. Okay, so next question, and I have my own opinion about this, and I learned
Right.
something right before the call that I didn't know. But talk about, and I'll put in my 2 cents as well, common mistakes that people make when doing 1031 exchanges.
Oh, yeah. Well, the dreaded one is that they don't set it up in time.
Mhm.
Every first of the month, I get that call. Oh, I just closed last week. I didn't receive the funds. They're still over at title company. Told them not to send me the wire. Unfortunately, that's what we call a failed exchange. You have to have it titled or at close of escrow, you have to have the exchange set up because it's part of the recording of that transaction that it's part of a 1031 exchange. So we can't go back and backdate our documents and do it later. So if anybody in my industry is telling you that, the burden is going to be on the taxpayer, and you're probably going to have a failed exchange.
And talk about entity to entity. That's another big thing I would think that would be a mistake as well.
That is too as well. Partnerships and entities are the ones that you want to work out the kinks up front before you get to the 11th hour, because you might have a partnership situation under an LLC, and maybe that other partner is wanting to cash out, doesn't want to do an exchange. So if their LLC is the taxpayer, you would have to look at that early so that maybe we can change the way it's vested or titled, to give you more options.
Got it. Okay. And so the big mistake that I see, and I just learned something new, is that anytime I've represented somebody, we've disclosed that it's a 1031 up front. And in my opinion, if a seller knows that, they know they're in the driver's seat because of the timelines, and you get through towards the inspection period, and let's say they're running out of time and they've already identified their 3 properties. The buyer's kind of in a box where I've seen sellers, take advantage of somebody doing a 1031 exchange. So, there's one thing I just realized is you don't have to disclose that up front, correct? But you need to check with your broker.
Yeah, it's going to be more individual to the broker that you're working with as an agent, or your real estate agent. If you're a client selling your investment property, it doesn't necessarily have to be disclosed on the MLS or in the first part of the negotiation, because you're right. If you have a savvy seller or buyer, they're going to look at this as a way to kind of pin you down to that timeline, or hold you out if you're at the 11th hour, or you're on day 44 and this is the property you're wanting to put as identified. So my rule of thumb is find out from your broker, if you're the agent, to see what they would like or prefer. But it has the only requirement from the IRS is that it has to be disclosed before close of escrow or constructive sale. So we put the exchange together sometimes right at the signing table, and that's when it gets disclosed. So that's going to be more of a tactful thing, and having a good agent behind you that understands 1031 exchange will help you out with that for sure.
Well, that's good advice. So I've sold a couple duplexes to somebody doing a 1031, and I knew up front, and I was in the driver's seat, and I knew that, and they were already past their 45 days. And so my property was it. And not that I was trying to take advantage of anything, but it's just in terms of repairs, negotiating price, anything like that. If the seller knows what they're doing, once they're past the 45 days. So you need a good agent behind you to help in that
Absolutely.
process.
Yeah. And there's a lot of agents that are not that familiar with 1031 exchange. So if you're selling your investment property, get with an agent like Tyler that understands 1031 exchange and the guidelines.
Well, this has been great information. So and I'm going to put them in the show notes. This is going to end up on YouTube and a blog post where I'll put all your information. But if somebody wants to reach out to you, you've got questions, they're doing a 1031, how can they get a hold of you?
The best way to get a hold of me is my direct cell number. That's 602-793-1558. Or you can go to ipx1031.com / my last name, which is Wittstock, Wittstock. And all the information, basic information, is on there about 1031 exchange. But reach out to us or our office either way, or email too as well.
Yeah, and on their website, they've got a great brochure that I picked up at the class that I went to. So that I'm going to link that up as well. So on the website, really, really good information. So
perfect.
It's great stuff. So appreciate it. Great information. And anybody that's doing a 1031, I'm going to send them your way. So I appreciate your time.
Appreciate it. Likewise too.
Well, that wraps up my interview with Rick, and I hope you got value out of it. If you've got any questions or comments, or looking to do a 1031 exchange here in Tucson, we would love to help. You can reach out to us, or you can go ahead and you can comment below, and we will get back to you. If you got value out of this video, do me a huge favor. Give me an internet high five by liking it. And as always, you can subscribe to the channel for more awesome videos. And if you hit that bell button each and every time a video comes out, you are notified. In the meantime, make it a great day.